It all kicks off with our main character remembering the advice his father had given him. The advice was simple and straight to the point. He should never, under any circumstances, get into debt, because the moment you take on a debt, you start down a path of no return, just like this dark, abandoned basement. Inside the place he was standing in front of was a room full of gambling addicts. Our main character then steps into the room. Everyone starts to stare him down. He then calls out for Boss Hio and asks if he's there, and right after, he reveals himself as a debt collector, thinking that those were the last words he ever heard from his father. The addicts get annoyed by his presence, and one of them calls him a psycho and tells him to get the heck out. Boss Hio, with a serious expression, tells his subordinates to shut up and scolds them for disrespecting a guest. With that, the man turns to the collector and apologizes for his guy's behavior, saying they don't have the best manners. Our MC ignores the apology and cuts right to the chase, asking if the money is ready. Only then does Boss Hio remember it's payment day. He then reaches into his jacket and says that he owed 100 million with 3% interest for 3 months, totaling 109 million won. However, what Boss Hio pulls out of his jacket isn't the money, but an axe. Our main character corrects him, stating that due to the compound interest contract, the exact amount was 109,272,701. Hio calls him team leader Kim Sang, and asks him to forget about the extra 270,000 won for an old Paul. In the background, Hio's goons snicker at the situation. Our MC, without a shred of fear, says he needs to be precise in his collections because even 272,701 is still money. Hio calls him as cold as ice and says if that's how it's going to be, then he doesn't need to be friendly either, as he tries to attack him with the axe. However, our main character remains calm, even with the axe flying toward him. He then dodges the axe with a simple move, leaving Hio completely stunned. Our main character then says he's just as shameless as the rumors claimed. Our MC then charges forward, preparing to punch him, and Hio wonders how he got so close, so fast. After that, he lands a solid punch right in the middle of the debtor's face. Hio's goons get up, furious, and curse at the collector. But Kim Sang and steps on Hio and starts saying that the reason he lent the money in the first place is because he was confident he could get it back anytime. All the goons get scared when they hear that, and one of them warns the others to be careful, since the MC now has the axe. Lying on the floor, Hio yells at his men, calling them idiots for being scared and saying the main character can't do anything to him until he gets the money. But before he can finish his sentence, our MC brings the axe down on him, and as the man screams in pain, our main character leans in and tells him not to worry, because he's not going to end him right there. After that, the scene cuts to a building. Inside, a man asks his boss if that was everything he had collected. Just then, Kim Sang and walks into the office carrying 2 briefcases packed with cash and says he has closed 4 cases, including Boss Hio's. The man is impressed and says that every time our main character comes back with the briefcases of money, he looks like a legendary general carrying the head of an enemy commander. Our MC hands over the bags and tells him to put 20% in the safe and deposit the rest in the bank. His colleague praises him, saying that in 5 years of loan sharking, he's never seen anyone with a 100% collection rate and that he's happy to be on his team. The 2 employees carry the money while hyping up Kim Sang, and with all sorts of impressive nicknames. Our main character takes off his dirty suit jacket, revealing his insane physique, and tells them to cut the nonsense and get him a shirt. The other employee hands him a clean shirt and Sang, and notes that the blood is still fresh and should come out if they take it to the dry cleaners soon. He then questions if it isn't time for the kid to stop doing simple errands and start the real work. The guy in the blue tracksuit agrees and says he was already planning to start the rookie on an easy case the next day. He then opens a folder and announces that the rookie's first mission will be to collect from a woman. He explains that the debtor is a young teacher who came by earlier and that the 10 million won debt is perfect for the beginner's training. Our main character grabs the file and looks it over in silence. Inside the document was a photo of a woman he seemed to know. While the rookie celebrates his first mission, the guy in the blue tracksuit gets confused, noticing our main character is acting strange, and asks where his boss is going, reminding him that he already ordered lunch. With his back turned, Sang and tells them to eat without him because he has one more place to visit. Watching the door close, one of the colleagues comments that team leader Kim is a real machine and has been acting like this for 3 years. He continues the conversation, saying that sometimes he thinks the boss built a debt-collecting robot because the only thing that matters to Sang and are the numbers. Back to our main character. He walks down the stairs with a serious expression on his face. He then heads to his next collection, and the man offers him the insurance money from his late wife. The old man kneels and begs him not to take that money, as it was the price of his wife's life. Even with the man on the ground pleading for mercy, Sang and remained unmoved and just put the money away. He recalls that he only went there to collect what was due to him, but people always end up begging him to save them. He then reflects on his job and what he really does. With that, he imagines himself in a bloody scenario where the bags of money become something terrible, representing the suffering he causes people. He then starts to leave and informs the man that there are still 28,300,001 left and that he'll be back next week. And as he leaves, the old man screams that he will rot in hell and that he will burn in hell for this. Our main character, showing no emotion, simply replies that he knows and says that even if he falls into hell, he'll still collect this debt. The scene cuts to another location, and then he remembers his father, a man who was always tired and overwhelmed. Unable to handle his massive debts, his father ended up taking his own life. The image he has of his father is of a man who spent every day on the floor, begging loan sharks for mercy. As he watched from the shadows, the only thing Young sang and could think was how pathetic that scene was. In this way, he remembers the moment when the collector's attention finally turned to him after his father's passing. Back then, he was just a 15-year-old kid who didn't even know it was possible to renounce an inheritance and, consequently, the debts. Realizing he was destined to live the same pathetic life he despised in his father, he made a decision. He tells the loan sharks he can't pay the debt but has a proposal. The head loan shark cuts him off and tells him to repeat what he just said. With a look full of determination, the young man offers an alternative. Instead of paying the debt, he proposes to collect debts for them. And so he decided to become the one making the cuts. Back in the present, our main character continues to look over the file in his hands. His gaze is fixed on the details in the document, and he stares at the woman's picture. A short time later, he returns to the office, and his colleague greets him with surprise. The guy in the blue tracksuit is completely baffled. He then turns to the rookie and scolds him for slacking off instead of going out on the collection, but the kid tries to explain himself. The rookie explains that the boss himself went to handle the collection personally and took the case himself. The scene cuts to a school. Inside, our main character finds the teacher in the hallway. He informs her about the 10 million won debt with 3 million won in interest. Then he demands that she pay the debt immediately. He then repeats his father's advice to her: never, ever get into debt. Next, the teacher's identity is revealed to be Kim Yae, and our main character's sister. He then faces his sister and says that was the only lesson their father ever left them. With her face full of tears, the woman calls him Big Brother. In an act of desperation, she grabs the sleeve of his jacket and begs for her brother to save her from this situation. Sang and watches her with a cold expression as she pleads for help. However, a student suddenly appears, interrupting their conversation. The student offers to leave the collected homework on the teacher's desk. Then he asks who the man with her is, as he's never seen him before. Our main character quickly makes up an excuse, saying he's a teacher from a neighboring school on an exchange program. The student seems to accept the explanation without question. With that, the young man apologizes for the interruption and quickly leaves. Alone again, the siblings stare at each other in the silent school hallway. Sang and then turns and tells her to meet him at the school gate with the 13 million won ready. He turns away and warns her not to even think about running as she tries to call out to him. A drop of sweat runs down his sister's face as she watches him leave, and she just lowers her head in defeat, accepting her situation. Later, outside the school, our main character waits for his sister while smoking a cigarette. He remembers a fight he had with her in the past, where the girl asked if he had lost his mind and forgotten how their father passed away. In that memory, she confronted him, saying their father was gone because of debt collectors, and questioned what he had chosen to become. The young woman was shocked and called him insane for becoming a loan shark. Then, she told him to stay out of her life, because she didn't need a piece of scum like him for a brother. Back in the present, Sang and reflects that it's been 10 years since she disappeared from his life. His memory takes him back to the pleas of his father and the older man, both begging for mercy. He then remembers his sister's plea to save her and wonders if this is the pathetic state she's in now. The collector sighs, looking out at the city skyline. He checks his phone and thinks she should be out any minute now. Suddenly, something catches his attention, and he looks surprised. What caught his eye was a notification on his phone. It was a message from his sister, Kim Yen. Our main character opens the chat, already expecting some kind of excuse. But as he reads the content, he clenches his phone tightly. The message leaves the collector in complete shock, and he stands there for a moment, unable to believe what he's just read. He then throws his phone on the ground, and immediately he takes off in a desperate sprint. His sister's message said that she hadn't expected to see him today. She continued, explaining that when she saw him in the hallway, she thought she was dreaming and impulsively grabbed his arm. The girl also apologized for being so shameless in that moment. Meanwhile, some students leaving the school look up at the building's roof and are horrified to see teacher Yi. And up there, in the message, she confesses that she felt vulnerable because she was about to take her own life. She goes on to say that she used to think loan sharks were the scariest creatures in the world, but she was wrong because there are far worse demons out there. The message continues, revealing that the monsters who led her to take out a loan were the very people she feared the most. She recalls her dream of being a teacher and calls herself a fool for not realizing the truth about her job. The girl describes the classroom she once loved as a living hell. Because of that, she decided to free herself before her soul was completely crushed. Then, the young woman apologizes for calling him scum in the past and for leaving without paying the debt. The message also mentions their encounter in the school hallway earlier. Finally, she thanks him for his concern and throws herself from the top of the building. As his sister falls toward the ground, our main character runs desperately, trying to get there in time. In that moment, he remembers when he realized he was destined to live the same pathetic life he despised in his father. The memory of his own decision surfaces as he stretches out his arm in a futile attempt to reach her. His choice was to become the one making the cuts, so he wouldn't end up like his father, because he was doing it not just for himself, but also for his little sister. That day, he held her tight, and with eyes full of determination, he asked her not to look, for her own sake. The memory takes him back to the day the loan shark questioned him about why he was going so far. With tears in his eyes, he explains that if he didn't pay the debt, his younger sister, En, would fall into the abyss, and that same fear drives him in the present as he runs desperately down the street. It turns out that before he started running, his shattered phone on the ground showed a scheduled transfer to Yai, and the scheduled transfer of 13 million won was the exact amount of the debt he was collecting from her. After his sister's fall, the scene shifts to another day at the same school. As he walks down the hall, his father's words echo in his mind, and he heads toward the classroom. Inside, the students are chatting and laughing casually, without a care in the world, and he remembers his father's advice that they should never get into debt. They live their lives unaware that from the moment you take on a debt, you begin to fall into a bottomless abyss, and he is the personification of that. He then finally opens the classroom door and steps inside as all eyes turn to him. He scans the entire class looking for the demons who tormented his sister. The image of his sister falling, along with her last words about being a fool, echoes in his mind. His sister didn't know that inside the classroom, there was a true hell, and in the midst of that hostile environment, he says it's a pleasure to meet them all. He then introduces himself as the new homeroom teacher and reveals his name, Kim Sang, and right after he thinks to himself that the delinquents right in front of him owe him a very large debt. And even if he goes to hell, he will get what's owed to him, because he is a debt collector, and he tells the students he's looking forward to working with all of them. The scene shifts to Congressman Park Man-cheol, who seems to be thinking about 10 billion won. He's in a meeting with an older man and comments that he was wondering why they brought him to such a fancy place. The other man, revealed to be Chairman Wang Byung-hyun of Jinhong Capital, replies that the reason is money. The congressman gets nervous while one of his aides tries to defend him, but is cut off by someone else. A burly man appears at the door asking for permission to enter, and Chairman Huang allows him in. With that, the man approaches and whispers something in the chairman's ear. Upon hearing the news, Chairman Huang's expression changes, and he decides they need to leave immediately. He then gets up from the table, saying they need to reschedule, leaving the congressman completely baffled. The politician's aide tries to intervene, reminding him that the food just arrived, but Chairman Huang just says to forget the meal, because something important has come up. The scene then takes us to Kim Yi-en's memorial, with her photo framed among flowers. Inside, Chairman Huang kneels before the altar while Kim Sang and watches him, standing. Our main character, wearing glasses and a formal suit, thanks the man for coming. The chairman dismisses the thanks and asks if Sang and is eating properly. After that, the scene shows a simple meal as Chairman Huang laments what happened to the young woman. Chairman Huang says he thought the collector had cut ties with his sister, but Kim Sang and replies that blood ties are hard to break. Given the situation, the older man asks what happened to the scumbags who tormented the young woman, and if the police investigation has started. Our main character just lowers his head in silence for a moment. He then turns and states that he intends to find them personally, leaving the chairman surprised. The head of Jinhong Capital seems to understand the gravity of the situation and thinks about those kids. He remembers how much Kim Sang and was willing to sacrifice to protect his sister. Our main character then gives a cold look and declares that they owe him a very large debt. Therefore, he makes a request to his boss and asks if he could use his influence to make him a teacher. Chairman Wang is completely shocked by the idea and questions what he's thinking. Kim Sang and explains that he believes it's the most efficient way to collect that debt and that he will continue to fulfill his other duties. Upon hearing the justification, the older man starts to laugh and comments that he's turned him into a true loan shark. After calming down, he agrees to help and states that infiltrating someone into a school is a simple thing to do. Our main character thanks him for the help, but the chairman interrupts him with an important warning. With a serious expression, he makes it clear that this favor is also a debt that Sang and will have to repay him in the future. The collector simply nods in agreement, accepting the conditions. The scene cuts to the door of classroom 3-2 as our main character introduces himself. Facing the class, he announces that he will be their homeroom teacher from that day forward. forward. With a focused look, he asks them to take good care of him, while mentally, he still can't identify the ones responsible. He observes the students, knowing that among them are the people who drove Kim Yae, and to despair. One of the female students quickly compliments the new teacher's looks. Another student comments on our main character's impressive physique and asks if he works out. A student with brown hair greets him formally, calling him by name. Our main character ends the introductions very directly. He then warns them that he won't be answering questions and tells everyone to get ready for the first class. The students complain about his attitude on the first day, commenting that even an AI would be more sociable. As he was about to leave the room, our main character stops at the door and asks if by any chance anyone there knows the reason why teacher Kim Yeon is gone, and a heavy silence fills the room. Analyzing everyone's reaction, he interprets the silence as a no. After that, he turns and walks down the school hallway. Back in the classroom, the brown-haired student wonders why the new teacher would ask a question like that. At that moment, he remembers the day he saw the collector with his sister in the hallway and the excuse he gave. By connecting the names Kim Yi-an and Kim Sang-in, the boy finally understands the relationship between the two. Meanwhile, our main character heads to the teacher's lounge. Inside, the other teachers congratulate him on getting class 3-2, as the students are great and there are no complaints from parents. One of the educators comments that the atmosphere is chaotic because the students who witnessed the incident are receiving psychiatric treatment, and 6 of them are on medical leave. Sang and reflects on the situation and wonders why someone who got along so well with the students would do something like that. Outside, he watches the students playing soccer and finds the whole thing very suspicious. Despite his suspicion, he can't find a single flaw in class 2. The class is known as a model within the school, and their relationship with Kim Yae-an was apparently good. Just in case, he checked the educational records and his sister's class diaries, but even with all the investigation, he couldn't find any significant trace of bullying. The memory of his sister's desperate plea for help returns to his mind. He then wonders who exactly are the cruel demons she mentioned. Suddenly, he hears an aggressive voice cursing at someone and stops to observe the situation. He gets closer and sees a group of students arguing, and the delinquent tells the girl to repeat what she said, and curses at a girl named Baek So-yeon. It turns out the delinquents had borrowed money from the girl. The girl explains that it's been 2 months since she lent the money, and he had promised to pay it back in a week. With that, the scene shifts to a flashback of his sister's funeral, where a man tells the collector to go back inside. That same night, the student Baek So-yeon was running hurriedly up the stairs. She runs desperately into the funeral hall. Our main character remains standing outside the funeral with a serious expression. It was at that moment that the young woman ran past him, calling out for teacher Yae, and he watches her out of the corner of his eye as she rushes by, distraught. The girl's eyes were filled with tears, completely shaken by the situation. Back in the present, the delinquents mock Baek So-yeon's courage for asking for the debt. The red-haired boy turns to her and assures her he will pay what he owes. He then asks if the total amount he borrowed was 500,000 won, and the girl confirms. Suddenly, the boy slaps the girl across the face. He then complains that she's being petty for making a scene over 50,000 won among classmates. Kneeling on the floor, Baek So-yeon begs for the money and asks him to return at least half. But the bully just calls her an idiot and says she shouldn't have lent it if she was going to ask for it back later. He glares at her with contempt, showing not a shred of remorse. The young woman remains on the floor, not knowing what to do in that situation. At that moment, the brown-haired student approaches and asks if she really needs that money, and she confirms that she needs the amount very much. Hearing her answer, the red-haired boy crouches in front of her and invites her to hang out with them later. He assures her he'll pay her during the hangout, leaving the girl completely shocked by the proposal. As they walk away, the delinquent tells her to get dolled up and look pretty, and one of his friends makes fun of him. The scene cuts to a restaurant where someone is yelling that the lady's rent is 2 months overdue. An older woman asks for a few more days, but the landlord refuses to give her more time. The lady tries to explain that the money just vanished, but the man doesn't believe her lame excuse. The girl, Baek So-yeon, wonders what to do as the landlord questions if a thief broke in. The scene cuts to a flashback where the red-haired boy asks to borrow 500,000 won from her and promises to pay it back soon. In the memory, the young woman explains that she doesn't have that amount, but the delinquent doesn't believe her. The boys pressure her in front of her mother's shop. The bully notices her mom isn't around and intimidates her into doing him a favor, and out of fear, the girl ends up taking money from the shop's cash register. Because of this, her mother looks disappointed while the young woman feels guilty about the situation. Baek So-yeon is caught in a dilemma, whether to tell the truth or not, but realizes that won't make the money reappear. Back in the present, she receives a notification on her phone and is surprised. The message is from Park Dae-jeon, the red-haired boy, who says he withdrew the 500,000 won to pay her. She's in shock and doesn't know how to react to the unexpected message. A short time later, the scene changes to a karaoke bar at night. Inside, the young woman approaches the door of room number 3 and knocks. The delinquent opens the door, surprised to see her, and invites her in. He leads her inside where his friends are waiting and promises she'll have fun. However, the girl makes it clear she's not there to have fun but to get the money he promised to pay. The red-haired boy puts his hands on her shoulders and asks why she's making things difficult. He then implies that she came there knowing full well what she had to do, and that to get the money, she would have to do her part of the deal. But the girl plays dumb. He then tries to take off her jacket, saying the place is hot, and she panics. The young woman screams for him to stop, but the other boys just watch, and one of them comments that she's hot too. The delinquent is amused by her resistance and calls her a tsundere, saying that's a relief. With tears in her eyes, the girl begs them to let her go, as she only came to get her money. Completely ignoring her plea, the bully holds her tighter and asks for a bottle of water. In the meantime, someone was rushing to the location. Meanwhile, the bullies continue and suggest that if she wants the money, she'll have to put on a show for them. As the boy holds her, another approaches with the bottle and tells her to be quiet so they can get her wet. They get excited about the idea of recording a legendary video of the situation. In a moment of complete desperation, the girl closes her eyes and remembers her teacher. But she's surprised because nothing happened. Even the delinquents were in shock. Their leader then looks toward the door, completely surprised. It turns out our main character had arrived to help the poor girl. Furious, he tells the delinquent to let go of the girl's hand immediately. The young woman turns and is surprised to recognize the man. She then remembers her teacher's funeral, where she cried inconsolably in front of the altar. That day, she saw the collector at the memorial, and now she wonders why he's here. The bully gets annoyed by the interruption and asks who the old man thinks he is to be giving him orders. Even with the direct order from the teacher, the boy refuses to let the girl go and mocks the situation. One of the other students recognizes Kim Sang and as the new teacher for class 2, but his friend doesn't care. The leader of the delinquents finally shoves the girl aside and tells her disappear for a second. He then turns to the collector and asks if he knows the young woman and if he's her uncle by any chance. The bully continues his taunts and suggests that maybe he's Baekso, Yaen's boyfriend. He then turns to the girl and asks if she's dating an older guy because she's broke. But before he can finish the sentence, our main character lands a solid punch right in the middle of his face. The impact is so strong that the delinquent is sent flying across the room, leaving everyone in shock, and he slams hard against the wall of the room. Baekso, Yaen watches the scene, completely stunned, and begins to understand the situation. In a flashback to the funeral, the collector thanks the young woman for coming to say goodbye to Yi-en, as she was the only student present. In that memory, he looks at her seriously and thinks about the debt he owes her. He will definitely not forget it. The other two bullies are speechless and wonder if Park Dae-jeon really flew from that punch. Our main character then turns to them and informs them that they borrowed 500,000 won from Baekso Yaen and obviously didn't sign a contract. Seeing the boys' confusion, he continues to explain that he will calculate the debt with 30% interest per week, and since the payment is 8 weeks overdue, the total amount of the debt has changed, leaving the girl surprised. With that, he reveals that the new amount is 4,078,653 won. Lying on the floor, the leader of the delinquents gets angry at the absurd amount and asks why he should pay that sum. The collector approaches him and states that a debt taken must be paid, but the boy protests, saying he only borrowed 500,000 won. Sang-in agrees that it doesn't make sense, but with a menacing look he says that from now on, it's going to make perfect sense. The scene then cuts to one of our main character's partners. The rookie then asks why his partner is following those students, and why their boss went into the establishment right after. The guy in the blue tracksuit gets annoyed by the question and scolds him, saying that when the boss moves, they move. He continues to explain that he doesn't know the exact reason, but one thing is certain, from the moment those kids became the boss's target, they are completely screwed, and the scene shows our main character staring down the delinquents. Lying on the floor, the red-haired boy gets up with a bloody face, and questions who the intruder is to meddle in their business and tell them whether or not to pay their debts. With that, the collector formally introduces himself as Kim Sang-en, the homeroom teacher for class 3-2 at Seolbit High School. The revelation leaves the girl, Baekso Yeon, completely shocked as she realizes he's the teacher for the class of the teacher who had passed away. The other two bullies are also surprised, and one of them accuses him of being a teacher who beats up students and extorts money. Our main character corrects him, saying he's not extorting money but rather settling a debt between students. He adds that correcting problematic financial relationships between classmates is also a teacher's duty. One of the delinquents reminds him that he threw the first punch, and with that they decide there's nothing left to talk about. The two then charge at the collector and tell him to get ready for the beating of a lifetime. Our main character comments that he only asked them to pay the debt, and the boys already started a fight. With that, he lands a powerful punch to one of the students' faces, and and then knocks out the other one with a precise strike. And next up was the student leader, and in the blink of an eye, all the students had been defeated. The red-haired boy can't believe what just happened. The girl, Baekso-yeon, also watches the scene, speechless. Standing over the fallen bodies, our main character gives them 1 day to pay the debt, by 5 p.m. the next day, and that if they don't pay by the deadline, he then steps on the leader of the delinquents' head, and says they'll wish they were in hell. After handling the situation, he turns to the girl and confirms if her name is Baekso-yeon. He then tells her not to just stand there and to go home. The young woman seems confused by his attitude. As they leave the place, the girl calls him teacher, and thanks him for saving her. With his back turned, our main character tells her not to worry and to go home. The young woman wonders who he really is and assumes he's Yi-en's older brother. She then remembers his promise not to forget the debt, and questions if that's why he helped her. The girl realizes it's too much of a coincidence that he's a teacher at their school. With that, she asks him if he came to the school to find out what happened to Yi-en. The collector remains silent, with his back to her. The student then says he shouldn't have helped her, because she knows those boys well. She warns him that they will definitely come after him until the very end. The young woman continues, explaining that if they report what happened, he will be expelled from the school. Our main character just listens to the warning in silence, and replies confidently that they'll see what happens. The scene cuts to the next day at school. Inside, some students are watching a video and commenting on someone's insane moves. Meanwhile, Baekso-yeon, sitting at her desk, finds it strange that nothing has happened. The student thought the delinquents wouldn't just come after the teacher, but would also get revenge on her. Given this, she wonders why Park Dae-jin is sitting at his desk doing absolutely nothing. At that moment, one of the other bullies gets up and walks toward the girl's desk. He then stops in front of her and calls her by her name, Baekso-yeon. The young woman tenses up at his approach, already imagining what's to come. With that, the boy shows her his phone and says he transferred her exactly 1,359,550 won. He explains that this is the amount of the debt divided equally among the three of them, leaving the student completely confused. He then asks her to tell the teacher that he's already paid his share and leaves the room. The girl is left standing there, unable to process what just happened. Sitting in his seat, Park Dae-jin is furious with his friend's action and calls him an idiot. After class outside, he grabs the goon by the collar and calls him crazy for paying the debt. He questions why he paid the debt just because he got beat up once and on top of that, only paid his own share. The goon yells back desperately, saying that's not the issue. He then reveals that the others received something too, leaving Park Dae-jin completely clueless. The scene flashes back to the karaoke bar right after the teacher left, where the fallen delinquent swore he would report everything to the police and the school. However, the phones of the 3 delinquents start buzzing at the same time. One of them is completely shocked by what he sees on his device's screen. He then holds the phone with trembling hands and asks what kind of joke this is, as the message was sent to all of them. The scene returns to the fight at school, where Park Dae-jin grabs his friend by the collar and asks if he saw it too. The boy desperately explains that the message contained all their personal information, including passwords, parents' addresses, and even the addresses of relatives he didn't even know existed. With this, Park Dae-jin realizes that the teacher is not a normal person and that they've messed with the wrong guy. At that moment, the 3rd delinquent takes out his phone and starts typing, confusing his leader. He then replies that he needs to pay the debt immediately because if his dad finds out, he's totally screwed. Hearing that, Park Dae-jin gets furious and calls his friends traitors. The blonde one apologizes and says he's gonna pay too, because he doesn't want to get involved with that teacher anymore. The two walk away and one of them warns Park Dae-jin to pay up soon if he doesn't want serious trouble. The scene cuts to classroom 3-6 where an economics class is in session. Inside, the delinquent is completely desperate and wonders if he should pay the debt too, but the big problem is that he doesn't have the money because he lost it all investing in cryptocurrency. Suddenly, teacher Kim sang and appears next to his desk and comments that he seems quite distracted. Our main character approaches the delinquent and reminds him that it's almost 5 in the afternoon. With a cold look, he tells the boy to save his useless thoughts for when he gets home. Faced with the taunt, the young delinquent gets angry. After class, he takes out his anger by punching the wall with all his strength and asks who the heck that teacher is who showed up out of nowhere to cause chaos. At that moment, the brown-haired student approaches and asks if he's in trouble because of the teacher. He explains that he heard Dae-jin's friends asking to borrow money in the morning, and the leader of the delinquents calls them disloyal beggars. The brown-haired student then decides to propose something and reveals that there is a way to not pay the money and asks if the delinquent wants to know what it is. The proposal piques Park Dae-jun's curiosity, and he listens intently. Later, after classes were over, our main character waits in the schoolyard. The girl, Baekso-yeon, approaches him and calls him by his name. Without beating around the bush, the collector asks if she managed to collect the whole debt. The student informs him that everyone paid the debt except for Park Dae-jin, and thanks to him, her mother was able to pay the shop's rent. Thus, the young woman bows deeply in gratitude and thanks him immensely for his help. Our main character dismisses the thanks, saying he only paid back what he owed. He then looks to the side and adds that there's still one debt pending. As Park Dae-jeon approaches them, the delinquent stares at the teacher with a challenging look and a slight smirk on his face. The student gets nervous seeing him, and the collector asks directly if he brought the money. Park Dae-jeon plays dumb and asks what money, and if the teacher really thought he was going to pay. The scene cuts to a flashback of his conversation with the brown-haired student, where the student suggests that the solution is simple and that the delinquent should make a deal. He explains that just as Park Dae-jeon's personal information was used against him, teachers also have private data. With that, the boy reveals that he knows a little something about Kim Sang-en's personal information. Back in the present, the delinquent extends his hand and says he's come to propose a deal. Our main character stares at him, not understanding his proposal. The red-haired boy then confirms that it's a deal. Park Dae-jeon plays his card and says he'll tell him the reason why Kim Yi-and jumped from the building if the teacher erases his debt. Our main character just listens to the proposal with an impassive expression. The delinquent then asks what he thinks of the offer and if it isn't tempting. Ignoring the blackmail, Kim Sang-en simply states that it's past 5 o'clock. The unexpected response leaves the red-haired boy completely confused. The collector then starts walking toward him, and the delinquent panics, asking why he's getting closer. Desperate, Park Dae-jeon tries to reinforce the proposal, saying he'd tell him the reason for the teacher's demise and that they should make a deal. Without hesitation, our main character grabs the bully by the throat and reminds him that he had already warned him. He continues the threat, saying that if the debt wasn't paid by 5 p.m. While squeezing the boy's neck even tighter, he finishes the sentence, saying that the debtor would wish he were in hell. The collector's gaze remains cold and determined as he carries out the punishment. With that, the scene cuts to a flashback, and someone was begging for his life. Our main character then asks what that is, and the boss tells a young Sang-en to watch the scene carefully. The boss then gives the order for his goon to proceed, and our main character just watches the debtor begging for help and promising to pay what he owes. Witnessing the scene, the older man tells the young man to look closely at the man's face and tells him to get used to it because that's the kind of face he'll be seeing often. With that, the young man stares at the man being tortured with a serious expression. Back in the present, the collector seems to remember that moment as he deals with the situation. With the memory fresh in his mind, he tightens his grip on Park Dae-jeon's neck even more. The delinquent begs for help while the girl, Baekso Yan, watches the scene. Terrified, the student covers her mouth in shock and asks the teacher to stop. However, our main character ignores the pleas and continues to stare at the boy who is begging for his life. He then comments on how amusing the situation is. He then drops him to the ground and watches him gasp for air, commenting on how easy it is for him to beg for his life. With a menacing look, our main character states that he hasn't even started yet. Lying on the ground, Park Dae-jeon curses the teacher and wonders why he just walked away. He then gets up and questions if the teacher is going to call his parents to collect the debt. Calmly, the delinquent walks away and thinks he has nothing to worry about since his mom abandoned him and his dad is on a business trip. A car pulls up beside him, and one of our main character's partners appears. Suddenly, the guy in the tracksuit grabs him from behind and covers his mouth with a cloth. While holding him, he says the delinquent has no luck at all, because if his parents could pay, he wouldn't have to do this. With that, he tells the boy to go to sleep because he's gonna need a lot of strength, and the kid starts to lose consciousness. The scene shows the delinquent completely knocked out. Moments later, he wakes up startled as a bucket of ice-cold water is thrown in his face. In front of him, a man in fisherman's clothes asks how long he plans to sleep. The man then tells him to start working if he wants to pay off the debt because every minute counts. Completely confused, the red-haired boy asks who these people are and where he is, complaining about the smell of rotten fish. He then looks around and realizes he's on a fishing boat in the middle of the ocean. 10 days pass and the boy is forced to work on a fishing boat, but at first, he didn't take it well. That day, he tried to explain there was a mistake and that he was just a student, but the fisherman completely ignored him. The fisherman then grabs him by the hair and throws him hard onto the deck. With a knife in hand, he warns the boy to listen carefully because there are only 2 ways off that boat. He explains that the first option is to work hard to pay off the debt fairly. He then brings the knife close to the delinquent's neck and presents the second alternative. The other way was to get beaten until he almost kicked the bucket and only then start working to pay off what he owes, while the other crew members surround him. Faced with the situation, Park Dae-jeon had no choice but to accept his new reality and started doing manual labor for the first time in his life. Since he had no skills, the older fisherman taught him with lots of love and affection by kicking him for tearing the net. After 4 days, he finally manages to organize the nets by himself and laments his dog's life while thinking about eating a hamburger. With time passing both quickly and slowly, the boy's sense of reality begins to distort as he gets seasick on the deck. 10 days later, the scene returns to the school, where some students spot a strange figure approaching. Scared, they wonder wonder if it's a zombie and consider calling the police until one of them finally recognizes him. It turns out the figure was Park Dae-jeon, who returns looking completely worn out and thinks his nightmare is finally over. Completely traumatized, he swears to himself that he will never borrow money again in his life. He also promises never to go back to that boat and walks down the school hallway. However, our main character appears and breaks his promise on the spot, telling him he'll be back on the boat next week. Completely in shock, the delinquent turns to the teacher and asks what he's talking about, not understanding at all. Indignant, the red-haired boy yells that he worked hard for 10 days on that smelly boat to pay what he owed. Our main character cuts him off and tells him not to jump to conclusions because the debt hasn't been paid off yet and the delinquent is left clueless. The collector explains that the moment he got on the boat, he missed a payment, and because of that, the debt of 1,359,550 increased with interest to 1,767,417 won. He continues the calculation, saying that more interest accrued while he was on the boat, totaling 2,297,640 won, leaving the boy completely pale. Kim sang and details the debtor's earnings and explains that the boat's daily rate is 170,000 won, but since he's an apprentice, 70,000 was deducted, and minus the 30,000 agency fee, his net daily earning was 70,000 won, which resulted in 700,000 won paid in 10 days, and reveals that Park Dae-jeon still owes him 1,597,640 won. Completely desperate, the boy calls it a violation of human rights and says it's illegal because he only borrowed 500,000 won. Our main character questions if he thinks it's right not to pay his debts, and reminds him that he was the one who got him the job. He adds that if it weren't for that job, the interest would have snowballed even bigger, and the delinquent is left speechless. Given the situation, the collector tells him to get ready because the next departure is in 4 days and informs him that he will register everything as an internship so it won't affect his school attendance. The news terrifies Park Dae-jeon at the mere thought of returning to that boat. The scene then cuts to the Junhong Capital office, where someone calls for the team leader. Inside, the rookie hands over a report on the investigation our main character had requested. The boy explains that since there were many targets, they hired 3 agencies to handle the case, and so far, 10 of the 20 students in Class 3-2 have been investigated. With a focused look, the collector asks if they found any anomalies. The guy in the blue tracksuit explains that's exactly why the agencies asked for confirmation, and our main character asks what the problem is. He reveals that there are absolutely no anomalies and that the records are suspiciously clean for a request coming from the boss. The employee continues, saying that the 10 students investigated so far are not just ordinary, but practically model students. Hearing this information, our main character asks if the investigation was done in roll call order, and his colleague confirms. Therefore, the next on the list is the brown-haired student, Yejeon. At that moment, the collector's phone vibrates on the desk, catching his attention. The notification is a message from Park Dae-jeon to someone else, telling them to bring the money to a certain address. Reading the message, he tells his colleague to go home early because he has some business to take care of. The scene shifts to a claw machine arcade where Park Dae-jeon waits impatiently. Inside, he curses the teacher, wondering if he thinks he's a slave. With a look full of hatred, the delinquent swears that with or without the debt, that teacher is going to get it today. He remembers that Yejeon had talked about how scary it is to force a student onto a boat, and Park Dae-jeon doesn't appreciate the joke. He complains that he did what he was told and ended up completely screwed, and begs for help, and says that he already got rid of one teacher before. Faced with his friend's desperation, he finally agrees to help, leaving the delinquent completely surprised by the response. Yejeon explains that last time he was just testing the waters with the teacher, and that this time he will help him properly. He continues, saying he needs to step in because things could get a little annoying, and reveals that the man is Kim Yae-en's older brother. The revelation leaves the red-haired boy completely shocked, and he wonders if that doesn't make everything even more complicated. Yejeon reassures him, telling him not to overthink it and just lure the teacher to the spot he prepared. With that, Park Dae-jeon waits at the claw machine arcade for the collector's arrival. Soon after, Kim Sang and shoes are seen approaching the meeting spot. Our main character finally arrives and informs the delinquent that he brought the money this time. The red-haired boy scoffs at him and tells him to stop talking about money like a loan shark, revealing that he brought nothing. With a calm look, the collector comments that he figured he was bold, but he's even more more so than he thought. He then questions if he's sure about what he's doing, and says it doesn't look like he has enough men, as several goons are seen hiding. Surprised at being discovered, the delinquent tells his men to come out and stop hiding. Suddenly, a gang of men armed with bats surrounds our main character in the narrow hallway. Faced with the situation, Park Dae-jeon presents his two demands, the first being that his debt be considered paid, and second, he demands that the teacher leave the school immediately. Ignoring the demands, our main character asks a single question. He wants to know who's behind this. Leaving the delinquent confused, he then walks toward the gang and states that the leader of the delinquents doesn't have the brains to plan something like this. Not knowing what to do, the bully panics and orders his goons to advance on the teacher. He screams desperately for them to get it over with, but the collector seems calm and comments that this is their limit. One of the goons charges with a bat and tells him to get a grip on the situation, but our main character dodges the attack with ease, and then prepares to counter-attack. In an instant, our main character's hand connects with the attacker's face, and he throws the jerk against the machine. Seeing this, Park Dae-jeon is completely shocked and speechless. Our main character then asks one last time who planned all this. He then lets go of one of the men he was holding, and with a look full of hatred he repeats the question, wanting to know who set up the ambush. The remaining goons hesitate, and one of them questions what they're doing, since he's just one man. Annoyed, the group leader orders his men to drag the teacher over immediately, and they advance, even surrounded on all sides. Kim Sang-en remains completely calm and faces the approaching gang. Our main character then starts beating up everyone, taking them all down with a simple punch to the face. It was a one-sided fight. One moment our main character was hitting, the next the bullies were getting hit. He looks at the fallen men with the same cold expression as before, showing no signs of fatigue. One of the men gets enraged and curses the teacher while trying to hit him with a bat. However, our main character simply ducks and grabs the goon by the neck and throws him against the machine. Their leader yells in frustration, asking why they're attacking one by one, and orders them all to charge at once, and says they can't lose to an unarmed guy in glasses. One of the teddy bears from the machine flies toward the leader and hits him right in the middle of his face, knocking him out instantly. Standing amidst the chaos, Park Dae-jeon watches the leader lying on the ground. He stares at the scene completely paralyzed and wonders what's happening. Not understanding anything, the delinquent watches the goons advance on the teacher and wonders why that man is winning the fight so easily. After taking down all the men, the collector wipes the blood from his hand and turns to Park Dae-jeon, saying the troublemakers are gone. He starts running and screams in terror, certain that if he gets caught, he's a goner, and says he can't get caught, no matter what. In his desperate attempt to flee, he ends up tripping and falling to the ground. Fallen, he struggles to get up, crawling across the floor. He then looks at the bodies of the goons on the ground and realizes he doesn't want to end up like them. Driven by the fear of meeting his end, the boy gets up and takes off in a desperate run for his life. Our main character watches the escape without moving and comments that it doesn't matter because he'll realize the truth soon enough. Standing in the destroyed hallway, he concludes by saying that once you've seen the light, there's nowhere to run. Running desperately, Park Dae-jeon calls Yejeon and tells him that all the goons he hired have been completely defeated. He continues, explaining that he barely escaped the situation and begs for help, certain he'll meet his end if he's caught. On the other end of the line, the strategist simply tells him to deposit 5 million won, leaving the delinquent completely confused. The brown-haired student explains that the amount is for the men's hiring fee, and the red-haired boy gets angry because he had promised to help. With a mocking tone, Yejeon states that he never said the help would be free and questions if he thinks using so many people is cheap. Park Dae-jeon yells into the phone, saying he's in this mess precisely because of debts and asks if his friend thinks he has money. Hearing the response, the strategist just says that's a problem, and at that moment, two suspicious figures approach the delinquent from behind. One of the men tells him to follow them quietly, while Yejeon informs him that from that moment on, the red-haired boy owes him a favor. On the other end of the line, the brown-haired boy details the new debt with a 45% annual compound interest and reassures him, telling him to follow the men. With a wicked look, he promises to find a good job for the delinquent so he can pay off his debt while the young man tries to protest in vain. Alone in his apartment, Yejeon reflects on teacher Kim Sang-en and thinks that he was just testing the waters, but the result was unexpected. The image of the collector facing more than 10 people alone comes to his mind, and he seems impressed by the teacher's skill. A smile appears on the strategist's face, and he thinks this is going to be fun. Back at the claw machine arcade, one of the fallen goons gets up and complains that the teacher is a monster. At that moment, a man with long white hair appears and scolds the men for making such a mess in his absence. Surprising the goon, with a bloody face, the fallen goon recognizes the white-haired man and calls him team leader, asking how he got there. The newcomer, with scars on his neck, questions if a leader should know where his subordinates are and comments that he didn't expect the scene to be so bloody. Faced with the chaos, he tells the man to tell him what happened, and the goon starts explaining that it all began because of the kid from Solbit High. He continues, saying someone asked them to take care of a teacher, and he took the extra job, but they were all defeated, and his boss asks how much he got for the service. Stuttering, the man replies that he got 5, and the white-haired leader seems completely disappointed with the amount. Annoyed, he scolds him for accepting such a small sum that tarnished their reputation, and on top of that, for being defeated by a single teacher. The goon tries to justify himself, saying the teacher isn't ordinary, but his boss kicks him hard before he can finish his sentence. Standing over the fallen man, he says that there's no way that could have happened. He continues the scolding, saying that with a business card from Good Capital, they can't be defeated by just one teacher. The team leader of Good Capital's collection team threatens him, asking if he'll take responsibility if the news leaks. With that, he turns and decides he's going to find the teacher himself and asks for his name, while the fallen goon only replies, Kim. He then completes the name saying Kim Sang-an, and the white-haired leader repeats it to himself, processing the information. A sinister smile appears on his face and he finally says so the man's name is Kim Sang, and the scene cuts back to the Junhong Capital office at night. Inside, our main character sees the rookie and asks why he hasn't left yet. The guy in the blue tracksuit explains that since he's still a half-baked loan shark who can't go out on collections alone, he at least helps with the paperwork. As our main character adjusts his tie, the employee says he wants to become a loan shark like him as soon as possible, and the collector wonders why anyone would want to be like him. The guy in the blue tracksuit continues the praise, saying that team leader Kim is the #1 loan shark in Korea and his great role model. Our main character then shatters his colleague's admiration and states that loan sharks are nothing but scum, leaving the boy completely confused. He continues his explanation, saying they are monsters who value money more than human life and creatures who drag desperate people into the abyss, saying, and finishes his thought, stating that they are scum with a guaranteed place in hell after they kick the bucket. With that, he takes off his jacket and shirt, revealing his scar-covered body, and asks if the employee really wants to become that kind of person, since he's at the top of that pile of scum. The guy in the blue tracksuit agrees that their job is dirty, and there's no denying it. Our main character tells him to go home, but the employee interrupts him and says the boss is not that kind of scum. He then reveals that he heard from one of the older guys about the collector's past. The boy says he learned that team leader Kim gave up his own life for his younger sister and that he voluntarily entered that hell for her. With that, the employee declares with conviction that if calling the boss scum is the right thing to do, then he doesn't mind becoming scum too. His colleague's words seem to touch our main character, who remembers something he had forgotten. The memory takes him back to a hospital where he was on his knees, begging Chairman Huang. Back then, he pleaded for them to cover the cost of a surgery just one more time and promised to do anything in return, and our main character realizes that this kid, just like him, moved by his colleague's loyalty. Our main character says that if he insists on becoming scum like him, he won't stop him, and the boy tries to explain himself. While putting on his jacket, the collector promotes him and tells him to go out on collections alone starting the next day with a 10% bonus, leaving the employee ecstatic. With his back turned, he makes a single demand and asks the boy to promise him that as soon as he pays off the surgery fee he borrowed, he will leave the loan shark life, and the condition leaves the colleague in the blue tracksuit thoughtful for a moment. With a determined look, the boy promises he'll do his best to get out of that life, while our main character gets ready to leave. Later, walking down the street, he starts connecting the dots and concludes that Park Dae-jeon has an accomplice. He continues his line of thought and deduces that since the delinquent is broke, he couldn't have hired those people, which means the accomplice isn't interested in money. Thus, he comes to the conclusion that it's not an accomplice but someone who used the red-haired boy to test him and wonders why this person wants him out of the school. A hunch comes to his mind as he stops in front of a door. The possible reason is that someone knows the real reason why teacher Kim Y and is gone and wants to stop him from investigating the case. With that, he realizes he doesn't need to go after the mastermind because the closer he gets to the truth about his sister's departure, the more the responsible party will have to reveal themselves. And as he turns, he tells his blue tracksuited colleague that he forgot his tie. The scene cuts back to the Junhong Capital office. Inside, the guy in the blue tracksuit celebrates his promotion excitedly because he'll finally be able to go out on collections and escape the boring task. He then starts thinking about what he should wear for his first mission and concludes that looking intimidating is the most important thing. Excited by the idea, the boy yells that intimidating means wearing glasses like the boss. He then imagines himself with an imposing look and a catchphrase for his first collection. As he looks around the office, office, he notices something strange on a coat rack. Suddenly, his boss's silhouette appears at the door, saying he forgot his tie, and the boy gets startled. He then turns and asks if team leader Kim came back just for the tie and comments that he could have just called. Our main character doesn't answer and just stares at him with a serious look, leaving the employee confused. Soon after, the scene cuts to the front of the office, where the collector is leaving the building. He stops for a moment on the sidewalk with a worried expression on his face. A short time later, he returns to the office and finds his colleague on the floor, severely injured. With a surprised look, he realizes the boy was attacked and wonders who the new guy was. Our main character approaches his colleague's bloody body and is shocked by the scene. As he examines the injuries, he realizes they weren't caused by a knife or bare hands, and upon checking the boy's pulse, he sees he's still alive. Holding his colleague in his arms, he concludes that the assault was done with a blunt weapon. At that moment, he hears a noise from behind the file shelves. Looking at the shadows on the floor, he notices the presence of more people in the place and comments that this is disappointing. From the shadows, the white-haired man attacks with a hammer, but our main character stops it with his bare hand, and as he looks at the blood, he wonders what would happen to the attacker's pride if he blocked a surprise attack. With that, the white-haired man kicks him and seems pleased that the collector remembered him, but our main character thinks this will be troublesome. The attacker's identity is revealed as Choi Oh-kil, the team leader of Good Capital, and he questions what kind of trouble it would be. Choi Oh-kil says a loan shark can very well swing a hammer around, but Kim sang and warns him that this could turn into a problem between the companies if he attacked an employee without reason. The leader of Good Capital scoffs at the accusation and asks if he looks like a psycho for attacking without reason. Faced with the accusation, the collector is surprised and finally understands that the men he defeated belonged to Good Capital because they were the ones who attacked first. This reminds him of a conversation with Chairman Wang where he coordinated with the Sobit School Foundation to get the job. In that memory, he thanks the boss for his help, but the older man warns him to be careful. The chairman made it clear that this was a personal matter and that he shouldn't drag the company's business into the mess. Back in the present, he thinks that this is indeed a problem and that he needs to solve the situation on his own. On the other side, Choi Oh-kil says that after thinking about it, he has plenty of reasons to finish off the teacher and tells him to get ready. Our main character comments that his rival came running, out of breath just thinking about defeating him, and the white-haired man laughs, saying it's been years since he's felt this way. With an excited look, Choi Oh-kil asks if the collector is also looking forward to what's coming. He then remembers an important lesson he received in the past. In that memory, he learned that to survive in that world, you had to become something terrible. The scene cuts to a memory from the past where a young sang and is hanging and injured while the white-haired man stares at him and says he knows what loan sharks are like. Our main character listens to the man say that the way debtors think is completely twisted and that they only pay when they believe they'll kick the bucket if they don't. The white-haired man then states that the young man is doing everything to pay his father's debt because he also doesn't want to meet his end. He then corrects himself and says the boy's case is a bit different because he's not afraid of them, but of something else. The real reason is the fear that his younger sister will meet her end, and hearing that, the young man clenches his teeth tightly. The boy's reaction seems to annoy the white-haired man, who questions if he doesn't like his method of training rookies. He complains about the kind of rookie the boss got him and pulls a hammer from his belt, saying the young man is useless. With a sadistic look, he prepares to hit the boy and says he'll start by breaking one of his ribs. Back in the present, Choi Oh-kil comments on how time flies and that now even rookies like the collector wear a team leader's badge. With that, the two rivals face each other, ready for the confrontation that is about to begin. The white-haired man then charges with the hammer in hand, yelling that he's going to see how good the teacher has become. However, our main character dodges the blow with impressive agility. The move surprises the leader of Good Capital, who comments on how much faster Kim sang and has gotten and remembers the old days. He recalls how, in the past, the collector's skull would have already been cracked by now. Back in the fight, he analyzes his rival's reaction and realizes that saying Anne's intention is not to turn this into a big problem. Faced with the taunt, our main character says he has a solution and asks his rival to listen carefully. The white-haired man stumps his foot hard on the ground and states that the solution is very simple. He then charges forward and yells that the collector just needs to bang his head on the floor and apologize. After the attack, Choi Oh-kil stops for a moment and asks what he thinks of the proposal and if they have a deal. In a fighting stance, our main character corrects him, saying to be precise because his men attacked first, and on top of that, they left one of his colleagues in a coma. With a determined look, he refuses to apologize for the situation. The refusal leaves the leader of Good Capital completely furious, and he remembers how the collector always said he refused to obey him. Blinded by rage, he advances with the hammer in hand, yelling that this attitude always got on his nerves. The white-haired man continues his hate-filled speech and complains that Sang En was always good at following the boss's orders and everyone else's, but never his. Because of that, he sees this fight as the perfect opportunity to teach the teacher what happens when someone refuses to follow his orders, and our main character braces for impact. A drop of sweat runs down the collector's face, and he thinks he doesn't have much time because his injured colleague's life is in danger. Lying on the floor, the guy in the blue tracksuit needs to be taken to a hospital urgently. However, Koi Oh Chil scoffs at his concern and asks if this is the time to worry about some random subordinate, telling him to focus on the fight. With that, he charges again and our main character prepares to block the blow. With a focused look, our main character advances toward the danger. Instead of dodging, he gets even closer to the bloody hammer. With a precise move, he lands a direct punch to Choi Oh Chil's face, sending him flying back. As the white-haired man recovers, drops of blood fall to the floor, and the collector remembers an important lesson. He learned that when facing someone with a blunt weapon, you have to take a risk and dive into an opening, and his rival praises the apprentice for following his teachings. Our main character then holds the hammer and asks if that tactic would work on the one who taught it. Choi Oh Keel grumbles that even in this situation, the collector's eyes are still the same and that he's still a scumbag he can't stand. Kim Sang En replies that it seems his rival really hates him and that, in a way, that's a relief. He adds that he feels the same way and hits his own shoulder with the hammer to get closer to the white-haired man. The unexpected move leaves Choi Oh Keel completely surprised, and he wonders if the teacher didn't dodge on purpose. He then realizes that the way Sang En moved was exactly as he taught him, and that the collector is trying to make him think he predicted his moves. Annoyed, the leader of Good Capital acknowledges that the apprentice has grown, and our main character finally explains his refusal. He says that his rival always gave him orders he could never accept, and that's why he always refused them. The memory of an order to take the child of a woman who didn't pay her debt comes to his mind. With that, he lands a powerful punch to Choi Oh Chil's face, throwing him to the ground with force. The impact of the punch sends blood gushing from Choi Oh Chil's nose as he's thrown back. Our main character continues listing the disgusting orders, like burning down shops to force people to delay payments. With another powerful blow, he hits his rival square in the stomach, and finally, he remembers the way the white-haired man took pleasure in people's despair. Because of that, he finishes by saying that all of it disgusted him as he takes Choi Oh Chil down for good. Lying on the floor, the leader of Good Capital seems to not believe what's happening. He wonders how the rookie he trained himself is now looking down on him with such superiority. With a bloody face, he laughs and questions if the collector thinks he's different from him, and calls him a righteous loan shark. He then states that they are the same, and that they are the same kind of scum. Our main character agrees that he is also scum, but with a bloody hand, he points out one difference. The big difference is that at least he doesn't take pleasure in doing this job. Faced with the response, he turns to leave and says it was good to see him again, leaving the white-haired man confused. The leader of Good Capital asks what he's doing and if he's just gonna leave him there, and our main character confirms, because his colleague is not in good condition. Annoyed, Choi Oh Keel calls him an idiot and threatens him, saying that if he lets him go, it's not going to end like this, and that if he wants to bury the hatchet, he needs to finish him off right there. Holding his injured colleague, our main character reminds him that he is also a loan shark and knows better than anyone what it means to have a debt. As he prepares to leave, he continues his speech and says that from that moment on, Choi Oh Keel owes him his life, and the leader of Good Capital stares at him in silence. The condition for payment is simple. The moment he leaks what happened that day will be the debt's settlement date. He then warns him not to get emotional like he did that day, and calls his rival's name. With that, he finally leaves the office, carrying the guy in the blue tracksuit in his arms, and goes down the stairs, alone and defeated. Choi Oh Chil laments that scumbag Kim Sang and now owns his life and acknowledges that he has become a cruel loan shark. He laughs at the situation and scoffs at the collector's advice not to act emotionally, because for someone who gave such advice, he himself is quite emotional, and the scene shows our main character taking care of his injured colleague. The scene cuts to Sobit University Hospital at night. Inside, the guy in the blue tracksuit wakes up in a hospital bed with his head bandaged. Confused, he looks around and wonders where he is, Suddenly, he sees the figure of his boss near the window and gets startled, but our main character tells him to relax and rest. The boy then asks what happened and who the man was who attacked him, and the collector explains that he was his team leader when he was just a rookie and that he now works for another company. With a worried expression, he wonders if this was a move from the competition, but our main character reveals the truth and says that the target was him and that his colleague was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Our main character then asks why he wasn't home at that hour, and the guy in the blue tracksuit explains that he was organizing the records of the students from Solbit High. Suddenly, he remembers something important and says that while doing so, he found a very strange student. He states with conviction that this boy is definitely not a normal student, and the information intrigues the collector. The scene cuts to classroom 3-2, where our main character is taking attendance. He continues calling the students' names one by one. When he finally calls for Yejin, the brown-haired student stands up and answers present. With his hand raised, our main character then looks at the attendance list and repeats the boy's name. Surprised, the strategist asks if he hadn't already called him once. Back at the hospital, the guy in the blue tracksuit wonders what it means not to be a normal student, and our main character questions him about the investigation agencies. His colleague explains that all the agencies they hired for the background checks refused to investigate one particular student. The collector stares at him seriously as the employee says the boss knows what that means. He finishes by saying that this only happens when the target is considered dangerous. With that, he reveals that the student's name is Yejin, and our main character turns to the boy in the classroom and says he needs to have a word with him.